So why do some people seem to just dominate under pressure while others, well, they collapse? It's not really about motivation, and it's not about some innate talent they were born with. It's about mental physics. Let's dig into the signals that separate real, compounding cognitive growth from just hitting a plateau and staying there.
The common belief, the one most of us grew up with, is that intelligence is something you have. It's this fixed amount you get at birth, and that's your lot. But the signal we're tracking today, the one that elite performers live by, suggests something totally different. Intelligence isn't a static thing at all. It's a dynamic system that constantly, and I mean constantly, adapts to the demands you place on it.
So, here's the big idea, the crucial point. Intelligence isn't a fixed quantity. It's a responsive, living system. It's better to think of it less like a cup that's either full or empty, and more like a muscle that literally grows with use.
And this right here is the fundamental law of the mind. Your brain, just like any other part of your body, is built for efficiency. It's not going to waste energy building new, stronger neural pathways unless it's absolutely forced to. So, avoiding the hard stuff, the cognitive difficulty, that doesn't preserve your energy. It just guarantees you stagnate.
Okay, but how does this change actually happen? I mean, on a real, biological level. This isn't just a nice metaphor, it's a repeatable pattern. So let's look at the physical mechanism that's actually running the show here, the one that governs all cognitive growth.
The entire premise, the whole shebang, rests on this one powerful concept: neuroplasticity. It's just the brain's incredible ability to rewire itself. And what that means is, every single time you push past a mental boundary, every time you struggle with a new concept, you are physically changing the structure of your brain. This isn't a theory, it's the bedrock of how we learn anything.
And this breaks the process down perfectly. It all starts with sustained cognitive demand. That means you're tackling a problem that is just a little bit outside your current comfort zone. This naturally leads to step 2, which is productive struggle. You know that feeling of strain, of confusion? That's not a sign of failure. That struggle is the actual trigger for the final step: neural reorganization. That's when your brain gets the signal to build stronger, faster, more efficient pathways to meet that new demand.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? Here's the distinction that matters. Easy thinking, just pulling up facts you already know, it feels really productive, but all it's doing is reinforcing the pathways you already have. It keeps you comfortable. But hard thinking, the kind that actually feels like a struggle, that's what builds new cognitive capacity.
So you see, genius isn't the result of some random lightning bolt of insight. It's the output of compounded habits. The things we associate with being brilliant, deep curiosity, intense focus, relentless persistence, these aren't gifts you're born with. They are skills, and they are trainable, forged in the fire of engaging with hard problems day after day. And over time, your very identity as a smart, capable person begins to follow the effort you repeatedly put in.
Okay, so we've got the mechanism down. Now let's look at the game. How does this idea of compounding your mental capability actually play out in the real world? In competition, when you're taking risks, when the stakes are high.
Right. We are not talking about some abstract academic theory here. We are talking about the core skills that define elite performers, founders, and leaders. This is the raw ability to look at a brand new problem nobody's ever solved before and actually build a solution. It's the capacity to think years down the road. And maybe most importantly, it's the ability to adapt and pivot when the pressure is on and everything is going sideways.
But what happens if you're stuck operating on that old fixed model of intelligence? Well, there's a huge cost. And it has a name: the performance plateau.
This chart just lays it out with perfect clarity. Look at the two paths. The fixed mindset, that relies on whatever talent you started with. Sure, you get some initial progress, but it always inevitably flatlines as soon as the challenges get bigger than your existing skill set. The growth mindset, on the other hand, sees those challenges as fuel. And what that creates is a trajectory of steady, compounding growth that can last a lifetime. The real consequence of always avoiding that mental strain is something we can call intellectual fragility. When your thinking doesn't adapt, you become mentally brittle. You can't handle anything new. You can't handle real pressure. And in a world that is changing faster than ever, this makes you invisible. And ultimately, it makes you replaceable. You lose because you made the mistake of confusing how good you were at the start with your long-term capacity to grow.
So, what's the alternative? What is the edge that separates the people who keep growing from those who just stagnate? It's a fundamental shift, a whole new way of looking at mental effort itself.
This is it. This is the core insight of this entire breakdown. The highest performers, the winners, they don't just tolerate cognitive difficulty, they actively seek it out. They hunt for it. They've learned to interpret that feeling of mental strain not as a warning sign to stop, but as the actual biological signal that growth is happening right now.
And really, it all boils down to your internal monologue in that moment of struggle. Do you interpret difficulty as a threat signal? That voice that says, this is too hard, I might fail, I should back off. Or do you interpret it as a growth signal? The voice that says, okay, this is hard. That means my brain is adapting, it's working. That single reframe changes absolutely everything.
All right, so now let's turn this lens around. To make any of this practical, you have to start examining your own internal rules, your own automatic reactions.
So really think about it for a second. What's one mental habit that, if you started it today, would genuinely stretch your brain? What's that problem you keep avoiding because it just feels too hard? That's your clue. That's your starting point.
And I'm not just talking about learning a new fact or a piece of trivia. I mean, when was the last time you fundamentally changed how you approach a problem? Real cognitive growth requires updating your mental models, not just adding more information. So, when was the last time you really did that?
And finally, maybe the most important question of all. What belief about your own intelligence, or intelligence in general, was just broken for you? Because recognizing that broken belief, well, that's the first real step toward building a much more powerful way of thinking.